Morning. I'm really shocked to see so many people because, I was just telling them I teach at Temasek Poly and students are forced to come at 9 but no one turns up, right? And you guys are voluntarily coming at 8 o'clock. Maybe it's a free coffee, I don't know. But thank you for coming so early, especially to hear me just blabber on for about 20 minutes or so. So my name is Adib, in case you guys are wondering why you guys are here. So I always have difficulty explaining what I do. So that's why I wrote there, I'm many things at once. At the end of the day, I'm a child of the earth because I think we are all just part of this planet, right? We are just one big community doing stuff. I train as a designer. I'm teaching, so that's the educator. I curate stuff. Sometimes it's articles, editing, and programs. I'm a brother. I'm a husband-to-be this Sunday, actually. I'm a friend. Thank you. Yeah. So I was telling Grace and Ren that I'll do this last presentation as a bachelor before yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Grace, Ren, Dalen, and gang. Right? Okay, so like I said, I'm many things at once. So let's start with 5 Foot Way. Some people kind of know me from there. So that thing over there, I used to write this little blog. And then this blog grew into some form of online magazine thingy. And then it died. And then it came back up again. So it was always my platform to try out new things for the city. So it started with writing, and then it became small events, and eventually it grew to a point where I was called to curate Archifest. Right? So from a little blog, it grew to this magazine, it died, and I became this guy who led Archifest. And along the way, I was teaching part-time. So at the same time, I'm also here at Temasek Poly. And along the way, I met a lot of people. So I met this guy from Stella, who's my festival producer. So she started Shophouse & Co. to kind of kickstart projects that activate urban spaces, which is really up my alley, right? So I train as an architect, I like curation, I like programs, I like activating the city, and she's trying to do that. So I joined them as a consultant, and together we are working on Archifest. All right, so that's how these 4 things make sense. But I have even put a timeline of events just to explain my life, okay? So I came from a very, very normal kind of education. So I went to neighborhood school, I somehow got into JC, I did NS, and I studied architecture at NUS, right? So very normal. I don't come from a very urban design or architecture family, right? So I kind of led a very normal urban life. Okay, so somewhere after my not so exciting life, in 2007, I started 5 Foot Way as a blog with my schoolmate. Right? So it was just 2 of us geeking out on WordPress. I was the geek, he was the writer. And then along the way, I picked up writing. I wasn't the most academic writer, so I was trying to write stuff that my other friends, who are not so academically inclined, could understand and discuss architecture. So that was the whole idea of 5 Foot Way. So it started as a blog, and then I joined Farm as a designer, and I left as a senior designer. And at one point, it was really good at 5 Foot Way because this was the baby era of blogs, especially for architecture and design blogs in Singapore. So by 2008 and 2009, we had quite good readership, and we had like contributors from China, from US, UK, some Singaporeans based overseas, and they came back and say, hey, you guys are doing something good, so can we write something? So that was good, and eventually we got selected to represent Singapore at Venice Biennale, one of the 21 designers. And that was kind of the peak for 5 Foot Way. But as usual, our day jobs got in the way, and it stopped, it died. And it got so bad, it got hacked, and the whole archive of 5 Foot Way just disappeared from the face of the earth. Right? So some of you, if you try to Google 5 Foot Way, it stops, or rather it starts from 11 onwards. Anything before that has completely disappeared. Right? So I don't even have archives of it. So I started teaching, and this was another big one where I started to experiment with a new kind of model for an online magazine. right? Again, it wasn't the smartest idea. I didn't go through any business plans and stuff like that. I just went for it because I felt that I needed to do it. So we did this subscription service, right? I mean, now some people are kind of familiar with it. You pay, I don't know, like Monocle magazine, you have the digital version and you get a physical version. So we dropped the physical version and went straight online. We got some subscriptions, but it wasn't enough for us to make any profit of it. But we still went on for about a year. And like I said, I was appointed festival director at Archifest. And this portion, 2013, is interesting because that was when I decided that I should not try to continue 5 Foot Way too much because it has done a lot of things for me, right? But I think there always comes a time where you decide that the model is not working, and I dropped it, and I decided maybe the way forward is for me to be part of Shophouse & Co. and create programs and try to activate urban spaces in another way. So of course, I still do writing. I write for some magazines. Some people approach me to contribute articles, but I guess the bulk of it now has changed from practicing architecture to writing architecture, to teaching about it, and now through activating architecture. So I went to this IDEO event a couple of months ago, and one of these guys, I can't remember who he was, but he said something which I thought resonated with me. So he started as an industrial designer, and he said he used to be interested in designing products. But after a while, you get more interested in designing the apps, the things that make the product work. So that's my transition. I used to design buildings. I used to be interested in designing cities, but it transitioned to figuring out how do you activate the cities? How do you make these buildings alive, the software of the building? So that's my transition. And so what you see here are some of the articles that we did in 2012, right? So this was the subscription service that I spoke about. So we did articles that were kind of talking about architecture in a more mainstream manner. So we did a whole study of how do you set up a mobile hot dog stand in Singapore, right? And we compared it to Indonesia. I don't know whether you can see it, but this is Singapore. This is, I think, Malaysia or Indonesia. So there are 5 steps which says you get yourself a motorbike, you buy your hot dogs, you buy your bread, you find a spot, you sell it, you earn money. And then in Singapore, there's like a whole bunch of applications, fill out another application form and other stuff, right? So very basic things, just a study of regulations shows a lot about how we activate our city. This is another photo essay by Nguyen. So he was documenting Toa Payoh, right? One of the oldest housing estates in Singapore. And again, just by documenting Toa Payoh from another angle, you see your own neighborhood differently. So that's another one, Expressway to the Future. We trace back the decisions about Singapore's expressway designs. So how they decided to build the PIE, the city, the AYE, and later the KPE and things like that. So all these things were how we explored the city without designing the city, right? And that has been the way I tried to explore things through 5 Foot Way. So it's still there on this website. If you guys are interested to check it out. There's no more subscription, so it's all, I just turn it on for free, but it's hidden somewhere, so you can check it out. And then came Archifest. So this was last year's event, right? So Archifest is a festival of ideas for the city, because we think that by creating this platform where anyone can come on board to contribute their ideas back to the city, it helps us to feel belong to this very city that we live in, especially us, we are all city people. So last year, when I took over with Stella, we kind of rejigged the whole format. We said, let's stop architects from just talking to other architects. What if we get architects to engage the larger creative community? What if we get students to be more involved? What if we get non-architects who most of the time have better ideas than architects to talk about architecture, right? So we decided, okay, let's build a pavilion. So get an empty plot of land, get architects and say, look, this plot of land is kind of crap right now. What can you build to improve it? How can you show people a new way to build? So it's like zero-waste building. So this was constructed in about a couple of weeks and then torn down and all the parts were donated to everywhere else. So no waste. The trusses were from the F1 trusses, this skin that you see. So those were slope stabilization materials, right? You see it hidden underneath slopes. But the designer came on board and said, let's use it as a facade. Right. So at the end of the pavilion, this mesh, this web, It was donated back to NParks and donated to various community organizations. So that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in. Of course, we had the normal forums, we did workshops, and what's different was we tried some sort of lifestyle angle. So this is Rochelle. Rochelle is, she's my schoolmate. She works at URA, but she's also a DJ. Right? So this kind of interesting stuff. So you're a musician, and yet you're an architect. How does music shape the way you design? How has your knowledge in architecture shaped the way you appreciate music? So that kind of transitions and mixture of various disciplines, I think that's where the exciting thing happens, right? And I think that's why most of you guys are here at Creative Mornings, right? To hear all sorts of different people coming together to share. So that's been Archifest 2012. So this was last year. And this year we're back. So this is a shameless pitch. Ideas for the City. So it's happening on September to 13 October. There'll be another Creative Mornings during Archifest. And we're talking about play, right? Play. So, and where's it going to happen? Of course, it's Archifest Pavilion at Dhoby Ghaut Green. Okay, so nice campaign image done by a very good designer, which I won't reveal. You guys have to find out by turning up to Archifest. So I'm supposed to talk about urbanism, right? I had trouble figuring out because I'm not trained as an urban designer. I trained as an architect. I wasn't even the smartest one. But I kind of, there's this thing that Chris Lee taught me. It's called the itchy backside syndrome, where you just have to do stuff, right, to understand what exactly you're trying to do. So that's been my journey. So this is what I think about the future of cities, okay? So once you know what the future of cities are, you guys are going to be rich. Okay? This is the key to the future. Wow, you guys look so serious. It's not real. It's kind of. Maybe. So I think the future sustainable city is going to be less hardware and more software. All right, we have all these green buildings, green technologies. We have all these hyper-efficient systems. I mean, yeah, that's going to help a little bit. But I think there's a lot more to it than just the hardware to make our cities more sustainable. And what do I mean by software? I mean that the future sustainable city might be all about love. Okay? Just hear me out on this one. So when you love someone, you're more humane. You empathize, right? You're mindful, and you take a very, very long-term view. So think about your partners. When they do something stupid, right? You're kind of like, yeah, I'm angry, and then you move on, okay? Maybe this is just the getting married guy talking, but try not to be, okay? So, or let's say you love your car, right? You think a little bit harder about how do you take care of this car? You really love it, right? You've spent so much of your money investing and buying that car, paying COE and stuff. You think a bit, like even what petrol do you put in? What's the most sustainable way to drive a car, right? Do you drive through how many ERP gantries? And then you say, okay, I'm going to have a schedule to clean my car every single week, right? So you think long-term, you care about it, and that's because you love your car. Also think about anything, right? Let's say you care for your plants. You think a little bit longer, right? Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you take a very, very long-term view. You care about it. You put yourself into it. So it's a very human kind of emotion, right? Very basic, very domestic. And when you apply it to something else, you apply it to your craft. You apply it to how you take care of the planet, your community, your cities. Then everything starts to change. When you look at a city in like a 200-year view, right? Whatever decisions you take today is going to affect someone else in the future. You think very hard, what do I build today? How do I design my cities? What is beneficial for my kids? What's next, right? And you get a sense of belonging because you love it, right? You don't see the city as just a shell that you just go in and get out, right? You invest yourself into it. So I think that is what is going to make our cities truly sustainable. Of course, the green technologies is a way of making everything more sustainable, but very simple things like, okay, I'm just going to open the windows instead of turning on the aircon, right? Very basic. You don't need high tech. It's just your soft skills. It's just your emotions. So that's what I think the future of sustainable city is going to be. And if that's the question, and love is something like a hint, so what exactly could be the answer? So this is where I bring my ideas into it. So first of all, I think it's creative programming in the spirit of placemaking. Okay, so everyone, we have the urban designers, the URAs, the HDBs, they're going to build everything. But someone has got to come in and say, okay, you have the hardware, now let's try to activate it. How can we program these spaces, or rather spaces, to make them places? Right? That's what creative programming is about. Just like this space, it's just another building, but until this morning, all of you came at 8 o'clock, until Creative Mornings decided to have it here, this building is empty. It's useless. All right? So creative programming in the spirit of placemaking is one of the keys. So if you need to do creative programming, what then do you do? So I think some people, most of us are empowered to do this. We need to create collaborative platforms. So if you think about it, Creative Mornings is a collaborative platform. Right? It allows all sorts of creatives to come forward. It allows the audience to come forth, the filmmakers to pitch. And after this, when we mingle, we're going to have lots of conversations. And all of these are going to create collaborations. And that's what's going to activate our city. Right? It's not another design. It's not another city. It's not about building a new Marina Bay. It's going to be how do we activate and make all of this meaningful. So the challenge for this is always how do you make it sustainable, right? Citizens, businesses, policymakers. I want to make my project, but I have no money. Someone else has the money, but he has no idea what's happening. The policymakers want to make Singapore hip and cool, but they have no idea what hip and cool means. So how do we create this platform so everyone can come together and it's a win-win-win situation? That's the challenge. That is the most difficult thing, and I think our smartest people on this planet are not putting enough effort into it. Right? We are worrying too much about, oh, we want to make this cool building so we can win another award. But, okay, pretty award, yes, congratulations, you win, and then what? Okay? Just like Gardens by the Bay, right? It's massive. It's like 3 huge plots of land. But who's going to activate it? Until you have your concerts, you have all your events, it's not going to happen. And lastly, empowerment. So I think lots of people here would have opinions on empowerment, especially in how do you activate change in the city. Okay, so let's try this. Let's say you guys want to make a flea market at your apartment. How many of you know what's the first step? Anyone? What's the first step of setting up a simple flea market? Anyone? License, right? Which license? Exactly. Right? That's my whole point. We have everything, but we are not empowered to do change. Right? So I think once we have the good people to figure out the collaborative platforms, to do the heavy lifting, to understand the systems, and then you can empower people. Right? And this to me has been the most transformative part of my whole short life and career. Because the moment we created Archifest, we empowered people. We said, okay, we have this thing, we're going to take care of talking to the venues, we're going to take care of the PR and marketing, you just come to us with the idea, and let's work something out. Right? You take the load off people, you empower people, and they come back with brilliant ideas. So, and another example would be this project we're doing in McPherson. Right? So we went to the community and we said, look, we know you guys are complaining about jaywalking. You guys are complaining about safety of streets. But what do you do? And they were all like, yeah, but LTA has figured it out. The MPs are not listening to me. Right? So we created this platform and we said, okay, let's bring LTA on board, let's bring your MP on board, let's bring landscape designers, urban designers, kids and aunties come together in one room, let's talk about it. Okay, let's create ideas, let's create simple prototypes. And then you just create a very small intervention, but everyone feels empowered because they say, okay, I'm now involved in creating my city. Right? Very simple concept, but that changes the whole thing. So just like another example, let's say your house, the corridor in front of your house. The moment you put plants, you feel like that corridor belongs to you. Right? You make it pretty, you're going to wash it, you water the plants, every time a kid kicks a ball and smashes your pot, you get pissed off. A drunk guy pee on your staircase, you get very angry, right? Because you have that sense of belonging. You feel that that's mine, right? I took care of that stuff, okay? And you see, when that happens, everyone contributes, the city changes. And that is sustainable in my eyes, okay? So that's what I have, just enable love to flow. It sounds really short, really simple, but it's actually quite difficult to do. And I hope all of us can contribute. So I think while we go have our coffee and just have a chat, I think just think about what's your idea for the city? How can you create these platforms and how can we enable love to flow for our city? That's all I have. Thank you so much for listening to me blabber. Thanks.
So thank you, Adib. And we're going to have a short Q&A session. And I'll just like to see if anyone has questions for Adib, our speaker over here.
Hi, Adib. Thanks for the talk. I was just curious because you mentioned about sort of love activating and being the good thing. But love could also go the other way. So for example, in architecture, I imagine like if some people really love some building for whatever reason, even if it's like a danger to the space around it, people would fight to protect it and not tear it down. So what do you think about that? Like love going the wrong way?
Asking me for relationship advice. I think these discussions are actually very, very healthy, right? When you quarrel with someone, it's always good to talk about it. So I think you have to go back to the larger picture. Why is this conflict happening, right? Is it a love for money? Is it a love for efficiency? Or a love for the environment and the whole urban life, right? So that conversation has to happen. Let's say everyone agrees that, okay, the starting point of this conversation is about the love for our urban environment. Then the discussion, the engagement, even the quarrels come from a good place, and I think it's easier to resolve it. And no matter what comes out, it's easier for everyone to accept it. I mean, it's true. Singapore is very small. We've heard this conversation many times. Singapore is small. We can't conserve every single building. We need to maximize our resources and things like that, right? So what has to give? But like I said, once you start from a good point, I think it's healthy. And for example, just yesterday, I finally opened my email. I saw the URA tender for Teluk Ayer Performing Arts Center. So it finally got sold for like almost $1 billion, 900 something million dollars. So we knew that land was going to go, right? It's sitting right there, this 3-story building, right beside all this monstrous building. We knew it was going to go. But there was always a challenge. Do we keep this, or do we allow that to develop and find another place for that? It's difficult. I'm glad I'm not the one making the decision, but it's important to have that conversation. And yeah, it's just part of love, I guess. Yeah. But thank you, Fabian.
I'll just shout my question. Okay. What is your ideal city in the world? Why?
Ideal city in the world and why?
And the second question is, what do you think is the ideal model city for Singapore to become? A city that we can look at.
Okay, you just put me in a spot here. Ideal? Yeah, ideal city. I don't think there's any city that's perfect. No, I know that sounds like a cop-out, right? But it's not. I love Singapore because of the efficiency of it, right? It's clean, it's safe. I love this bit of the city. The rules, I hate it. I hate the fact that it's too predictable. I love Japan because there's all these small nooks and crannies and layers of history happening to it. I love that bit. But I hate it when I get lost. I like getting lost to a certain extent, but I don't like being lost every day. New York, right? New York, I love the vibrancy, but after a while, I just like, everyone's moving so fast. Come on, you guys, just chill. Just stop drinking coffee and walk slower. But there's pros and cons. So at different points in my life, I kind of like different bits of the city. So I don't think there's a perfect city. Okay? Like I said, it's not a cop-out. I really feel that way. So what's the ideal model for Singapore? I think Singapore is special. Okay? And we are still figuring our stuff out. We are only one of the, 3 city-states in the whole world. Right? It's easy to control. I was just having a chat with this taxi driver. He was saying, you can't do any crime in Singapore. It's so easy to catch. I just drive 2 hours from one end to one end. I can control everything. Right? So we have that level of control because we are so small. So that's why our urban planning is so efficient. But our rules, our software, we are still figuring it out. Even our population mix are changing. Right? Even our careers, our lives are changing. And that's the beauty of cities, really. Like even New York, 100 years ago, it's not the same as New York today. And we'll figure it out. Even if you ask any New Yorker, I don't think all of them are happy. They'll bitch about high rents and stuff, but the subway smells of pee and stuff, right? But along with that, you get good buskers hanging around on the subway. So pros and cons, we are figuring it out, but what I'm excited about is that we are in this generation that we can impact what it's going to be like. So that's the most exciting part. I don't know what, I just hope I don't screw it up, but, and I hope all of you don't screw up, but it's exciting. Yeah, I don't know, I have no answer. Yeah, I just make things up along the way.
Yeah. Hi, I have a question.
I think Stella, you want to answer? Okay, she's my festival producer, so I always ask her this question too. It's like, okay, how do we start? I'm guessing, okay, from my very short experience, depending on what kind of apartment that you live in, if it's HDB, you go to the town council and try your luck. They'll probably say, not my department, you go and talk to the other person, okay? Right? Or if you live in a condominium, you'll probably go to, like, I don't know, your MCST and then whoever is in charge of that. So sometimes you just have to start somewhere, and someone will tell you it's wrong, and then eventually you reach somewhere. So that's always been how we operate. We try our luck. Sometimes you just Google, just find the name that you sound like he's in a very good position. He's like director of something, right? You just email him and say like, hi, I like to do this. I think it's a really cool idea. What do you do? So you'll probably get no reply, or he'll CC you to someone else and say, I don't know, whatever her name is, please take care of this. Right? So yeah, we do it. Like I said, I make things up along the way, okay? Just like the city, and like my whole life, as my timeline says. Not very useful, practical, but I hope it helps in some way. Yeah.
Okay,
Hi.
we've seen a lot of cities use data and technology to optimize how people behave. Do you see we're doing the same thing here in Singapore, or what's getting in the way? What are the barriers for us to do that?
In terms of optimizing our service.
Yeah, using opening up data and using technology to
Because I attended a couple of Up Singapore events, the hackathon and stuff. So from what I've heard, they are trying to open up some of this data. But as usual, Singapore being Singapore, we are a bit reserved. We are not sure the moment you unleash this data, what's going to happen, right? Like I said, we are still evolving. And this is like unofficial information that I just know from friends and stuff like that. So I think we are in that stage where we're figuring out what happens if we release the data to the public. Because we are so used to having a central controlling authority of some sorts, right? But once you open up data, things change. But I think we are trying to get there, right? At least from what I know of seeing data being released. So check out the guys from Up Singapore. They do lots of hackathons. And occasionally we have like NEA opening up the data. LTA have not opened up the ERP data, from what I know. Serious, we were just doing a mental calculation how many millions of dollars they earn a day. I think PUB opened up the data about the water levels. NEA has opened up the data. So some agencies are releasing data in small batches, and we are trying to figure out. Yeah. And related to that, there's quite a lot of discussions in overseas about the future of these smart cities, right? Is it even useful? Because after a while, it becomes so optimized that is it even beneficial to the city? So there's a whole lot of discussion about, because no city has ever implemented that in a large scale, right? And even if they have, we haven't seen the effects of it. So it's still being debated, but lots of discussion online. Yeah.
So what do you mean by cities being optimized?
From what I know of this discussion, it's like making your transport system really, really efficient. How do you distribute a power grid so that it uses, or it consumes the least amount of natural resources? The lights, right? At 3 a.m., this street is very, very deserted, so let's dim down the lights. It's that kind of efficiency, smart cities. So I think IBM has done lots of work on it. Even like Philips, for example. So
Why are you seeing this downside of that?
I think what I've read about discussions is that it becomes so optimized, right? It means that the whole city works perfectly. Okay, an analogy is like Singapore, right? We've been perfect for the past, almost perfect for the past, 20 years. And then our MRT breaks down and we all freak out, right? Suddenly, floods, we all run like mad chickens. So that's the kind of efficiency versus human nature, kind of life, urban life, right? I don't have good words for it, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Okay, I hope I've been making sense. Yeah. This is what my students have to put up with every morning. I think that's all.
That's all. We have one. Anyone has one last burning question for him? Okay.
Talk about your love for the environment. How do you see technology and optimization of countries and cities? Do you think it will affect the environment? Like, yes, we want to develop, but are we neglecting the environment?
Okay, let's start about what do you mean by neglecting the environment? What do you mean by that?
Like, okay, I watch too much movies. So when I see all these like future movies and all that, it's like you see, wow, it's so cool, but then you don't see Earth anymore. You don't see natural, like you know, Singapore is like everywhere is oh, this plant I planted here, so it's gonna be here. You know, where's the natural?
Yeah, I think that the serendipity, the chance encounters, right? So, again, I have to say this, I don't have the answer for you. Uh, and I think it's up to us now, really, to kind of figure out and say like, okay, this is a bit too much. What can we do to change things up, right? And I think once you create the platforms for that, to explore the possibilities of non-efficiency, maybe something will come up, yeah. I don't have the answer because I'm still creating, all of us, we are still creating the future, right? So it's up to us now to decide where's that line. Yeah. I mean, a long time ago, someone decided that we have to plan every single thing, right? Someone, somewhere, long time ago. So now it's another someone, right? And one day it'll be us being that someone. So what do we do? So I don't have the answer. Why don't you tell me what's the answer? That's my lecturer kind of thing coming up. All right, so thank you guys. We'll be around having coffee and stuff, so I'll pass it back to Dylan.
Let's give a round of applause for Adib, please.